Excellent. Hello world, Podlayer team here, doing some more track 2 training, which is where we work on our voicing ability, talking about things that we're interested in, what we believe in, questions that we have, and so on. We're taking a bit of a pause from the ARC training. Les Mitchell, do you have any beats ready, or are you still kind of mulling on stuff?
Yeah, so actually regarding my beat, actually I wanted to mention that. It's just like, I don't think writing this is going to take very long, but basically what I was originally going to do is I was, as I told you last time, but I guess I'll just say again, now that we're live anyway, if anyone's interested, is that I was going to do kind of an intellectual history. And as I got more and more into that, I realized just how involved that was going to be. But what's kind of funny is what I was originally, the reason I was originally wanting to do that is because, like, one of the things that it was going to kind of take the place of is my general stances on certain things, because sometimes I might, it's sort of hard for me to take stances sometimes. That's just something about me, is that very often I find myself as kind of the person who kind of relaxes people of their stances. But I do have stances that are important to me, and so about, you know, politics and how you make decisions and stuff like that. So I just realized that it's going to take me kind of a while to sort of figure out how to best express that. But I've made good progress on doing that, and so I'll just vlog with you guys and keep on going as we go. But like, I'm organizing all my thoughts and distilling out what my fundamental positions are. I think I was kind of trying to avoid that to begin with, but actually I find I kind of do want to do that.
That brings an interesting question, because myself, when I did my About Myself, I did include some of what I sort of believe, so to speak, but I did a bit more focus on me as a person, my process, how I got to where I am now.
Yeah, and I certainly did lots of that.
Oh, definitely. No, so it sounds, what I was saying, it sounds like there was a parallel of that, in that you can touch on it somewhat, but in an origin story, you really can't go over your entire kind of belief structure, in that it'll take up too much space.
Yeah. So, well, originally I was going to go through like this whole history of like my mind going through all these ideas and how I thought about them, and it's just like so much of the material I find, like I'm just like, why don't I just do a plug piece on this at some point? Like, if I really care about talking about it. So yeah, I'm distilling some of my just most fundamental beliefs. Certainly not all of them, not even close, not even a small fraction, frankly. But yeah, just basically how I make decisions about certain things, and some core political positions of mine.
Excellent. Actually, that's something I want to talk to you guys about. We can maybe get into later tonight, or maybe on Thursday. Is basically, I do plan on doing a vlog at some point. One I mentioned is about qualia, all the different kinds of ways that they've been categorized in human history and what those beliefs are. But then I want to do another more general video on just general beliefs. Like, one aspect, like questions like, do you believe in human qualia or not? Blank slate or innate sort of aspects. And then if they believe in that, I'll say, see my next video, which is blowing out what exactly qualia do you believe in. But on the one video is I'm interested in talk with us and email some about it, is some good questions to ask people. Because I actually want to ask myself and then respond to it, but I also want to ask other people, like a series of questions, just good, get to know you philosophically questions. You know, what do you believe in and why? I'm really looking forward to that.
So like just that, like that's why I've been having a hard time, because like a lot of time I have a very hard time answering questions like that, because like I just want to like talk forever and it can't, or just say nothing at all. So like
yeah, definitely. But anyway, we can get into that another time. Maybe even Thursday would be good, because that might take a whole thing up. Since we don't have a ton of time left right now, I'm thinking maybe we can do some current events. There's quite a lot going out there, but one story that a lot of people are talking about, and it's been good for us to kind of practice our, live streaming about a current event, is the current situation in Charlottesville. So I'm not sure how much you guys know about that, because whoever here knows maybe a little more can do a quick canvassing. Are you guys familiar with it at all, or?
I've heard of it, and I'm hearing it like all over my Facebook feed, but I haven't looked into the nuances of it.
Lots of I've seen people all kinds of different opinion on it. I mean, I talked to Gabe a little bit about it, and I've seen Wendy post about it a lot.
So I've seen some different things I can just throw out there as some general canvassing, and then we can maybe go from there.
Sure.
But again, I don't know a whole lot. It's like you, but I have heard some general themes. Basically, you have a group of right-wingers that have some Nazi-esque vibes to them, and violence in the way they operate. But then there's also the opposing group, which
Antifa.
got some names. Yeah, but they got some communist action going on with them, and they're also prone to violence.
Yeah.
So we basically have some wannabe Nazis and some wannabe commies, and they're both violent. All right, so I don't know, so these are broad strokes. Anyone can correct me, but this is my general understanding of the situation from a high level.
Yeah, that's correct.
So then the more communist-leaning or leftist-leaning group, I say communist because you can be leftist and not be violent. These groups tend to be violent. They both, one, I think the conservative group or the right-leaning group wanted a permit, and they were denied at first, but then eventually they were given the permit. So they did have a permit to be there. Showed up. The other group showed up without a permit. So they're both there, and they don't like each other. So now this part gets a little hazy, but I believe there's also some contention that the mayor was a bit sloppy in this, because the police, there's a lot of confusion on what exactly is here, and I don't have firm stuff for you at all, but apparently, in general, the police are not getting a good rap on this, in that they did not do much to stop the violence between the two sides. I'd also heard that the leftist side had done more violent things prior to this, and that from people on the ground that I heard some people saying that they're the one who initiated it, the engagement, but that the right side actually was prepared and went hard, and that they were the ones that end up with the car smashing into the other side. But that actually that wasn't the only violence that went on. Apparently there was a period of time of escalating violence between the two sides. The details of that I don't really know. So
yeah,
that's basically that. But I basically, there's two sides, both violent, left and right. They went there. The police did not do a good job. A lot of people believe that the mayor may be culpable, but the media is not covering that. They're not covering the mayor possibly being culpable, the mayor possibly being aligned with the leftist group, or the leftist group's history of violence prior to the event. The media is mainly covering the right-wing violence side. And then after that is Trump's reaction, which people thought was too slow. So that's what I know. What do you guys think?
Yeah. Yeah. And with Trump's reaction, like I heard, roughly what he said, which was that I think, or at least I heard that he had said, he had said that both sides, did wrong. But I don't know much else. I know the left is really mad that he said that both sides, that he basically said negative things about both sides, as opposed to just disavowing the right. The right seems to be phrasing it as not being as something that's gaining way too much attention, way more attention than it deserves. And the left is saying that this, needs our attention, and that the people on the right should be, and everybody, regardless of what side you are, should be saying that this is wrong, or should be, talking about this.
What's your thoughts? Do you guys have?
I guess, I mean, I don't know the nuances of it, but my impression is that these are very extreme people on the left and the right, that don't represent the majority of people on either side. Like most people on the left don't identify as being, I mean, and maybe these people don't identify as being communist, but most of them aren't violent, on either side, or as extreme, or quite as extreme, I should say. There's, I guess, it seems like there's a strong temptation to, like, for either side to really, like, to focus a lot on these issues, like the examples of violence, for example, because it makes the other side look bad. And I don't think it's wrong to talk about this or to bring it up, but it seems like there's, like whenever violence happens, like of any kind, and it's like one side causing it, like the opposing side, there's a temptation to bring it up because it makes them look bad. And so it seems like this is a situation where the left is really, or the media is really focusing on this issue, because it seems like, with, because, there were, because so many people, from the right showed up, it looks like it's like their problem, and it's, it's much easier to describe it as, as their issue than it is as theirs.
It's true. What do you think, Mitchell? I agree with everything you said. It made sense.
Yeah, I was agreeing with what Ben said about, like, violence and stuff. Like, that word even alone. Like, I remember Coach you saying something about that before. Like, someone brings up, like, violence. It's like, there's that word is supposed to make you have, like, a reaction. Not that this wasn't real, like, problematic violence. I mean, I'm sure it was and all. But at the same time, I've definitely heard of, like, both sides doing violence and being provocative and just, I can't really sympathize with either side of this too much. So.
There's a vlogger, I think one of you turned me on to, that was speaking on the subject. It's something Styx, STYXX, something like that. Ziny vlogger, long hair.
Styx?
Oh yeah, the Styx Hexenhammer.
That's one Ben just put.
Yeah, that's the dude I had a picture of. And stuff. Yep.
That's probably what brought my mind. But it's a more malicious coincidence. But he actually did a video, I think, very recently, talking about how people, and I'm sure we'll get this as well when we move out into these kind of discussions, claiming that he's left or he's right, or trying to entice him to the left or the right. But he's like, none of your arguments.
Another thing I've been seeing a lot of lately, people have been saying, and Styx, I think, made a video about this, about you need to take sides on this issue, and they've been posting, like, this quote of, like, if at times of great moral crisis, the worst circles of hell are reserved for that. But I think that I was just thinking earlier today, like, that view of taking sides is so limited, because, like, they're having a conflict, okay, and obviously there are sides to it, but that conflict itself is a thing, and you could take sides against that. That's taking a side.
Very good point.
So I agree that neutrality generally benefits oppressors doing nothing, because they're just going to do bullying, inappropriate things. But how you lean and how you take a side is very complicated. And they often try to make it uncomplicated to suit what they're doing.
Yeah, as if the only other option is their option or this horrible option. So if you're not for them, you're for horrible.
Yeah, well, I could just be against everything that you're all doing.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, like, I've been seeing a lot of posts from people who say that, regardless of which side you're on, you should be, you should say, you should basically be saying that this is wrong, or talking about this, and this is something we need to talk about. I'm hearing this more from the left than the right, because the right doesn't want to, thinks there's too much attention being brought to this issue. But I'm like whenever somebody says like that I need to, like when I'm not someone who's like personally engaged with somebody or something, and somebody says that I need to say something on it, or I need to do something about it, and it's just this like foreign kind of political topic or event, I'm a little bit skeptical, because if it's something that, you know, happened with these Nazis in Virginia, like the necessity for me to speak on it, or my attention is like, I wonder like why, like where's this motivation for me that I need to do that come from, or this principle? Like what moral standard do I have to actually to do that, when I may not necessarily be interested or focused on it? And it's similar with like, you know, with like elections and voting. Like there's all these different elections, local, state, etc. You know, a lot of times, you know, people, you know, in the 2016 election, people were saying like, if you didn't vote, you know, if you were on the left, people were saying, if you're not going to vote, or if you're not interested, then you're voting for the opponent. And people on the right were saying the same thing. So that was another situation where it seemed like it didn't, like by not being involved or interested in participating, or interested in engaging that, it seems like there's like this moral standard that you were rejecting by not doing that. And I think in some cases, like you could be aware that something bad's happening, and in such a situation of crisis where there is something you can directly do about something, then sure. But I think this is a situation where no one person's vote, you know, statistically is ever going to, you know, swing the election. That's not to say on the grand scale, obviously that could swing the election if everyone did that, or if a large number of people did. But nobody really has enough of an influence to feel bad if they don't, you know, participate in that or engage in that conversation.
Yeah, there's also a separation of like public will versus being weaponized. These sides that polarize, they tend to be highly weaponized, but don't really represent the overall will of the people. But the people, they are larger and want to do more of a moderate kind of push, but they, as a part of that, aren't trying to be weaponized all the time. You know what I mean? So it kind of makes this weird balance where a small amount of people are causing a large amount of ruckus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What to really bring to the table, because their arguments are often extreme or represent sort of rather fringe or minority mindset that isn't really helpful to most of the tribe.
Yeah, and it seems like those voices are being amplified because of the tension between the two sides. Like if there wasn't this tension between the left and the right, I don't think they would be amplified to this degree. And I don't think the violence would have occurred to begin with, because there wouldn't be the tension. So it's like the extreme tension between the two sides is what, you know, these Nazis and Antifa, I think, at least largely represent. Yeah,
and it's a part, I think, I mean, there's a lot of other factors here as well, but one factor is that it's part of this two-party system. Mm-hmm. The two-party system, by its nature, is going to make for very intense, highly polarized conflicts, and the only way you can really deal with it is to defeat the enemy or sue for peace. And mm-hmm. that makes for very rough engagements. If you have a third party that's legitimate, or more than that, then if one party, because sometimes the left side is being more reasonable than the right.
Yeah.
Sometimes the right is more reasonable than the left. And during those periods, instead of like beating on the other one, they can try to enlist that third party of like saying, come on. And the third party can sometimes go more left, sometimes, you know what I mean? They can shift, because right people, like right wingers, they kind of have like, actually wingers, left and right wingers, they have a code like, I stay in this wing, like all the issues, I am left or I am right. And most people aren't like that. So there should be a third party that can kind of float left or right as need be. But right now, like electing, you generally elect a left or right person. You know, I mean, most of the country is moderate, and yet when does a moderate ever get elected? Never.
Yeah,
off.
Yeah, there's a major problem with polarization, political polarization happening right now. And actually, over time, I have a little chart here. that basically, highlights that political polarization has actually gotten worse over time. And I also, in the 2016 election, basically blue areas were bluer than they have been in previous elections, and red areas were redder. So, which basically indicates that geographical areas are more one-sided, than they used to be in the past. They used to be more moderate than, there used to be more moderation than there is currently. So
I think two things that are on my mind on that. One is, well, actually three things. That to me, every time I keep hearing these topics, they come to my mind. Let me write it down real quick. Okay, history, enemies, truth. They're my keywords. All right, so with history, and by the way, jump in if you guys have anything at any point, but these are just thoughts I had. One is the history, and it relates to the second point, but I'll just talk in large conceptual terms before we get into personal things or strategic things. On just a large natural law, just pure truth scale, there's no real analogs in history of humans being all conservative or all liberal. There's periods of time where certain cultures prize one over the other, but always the other one's still there fomenting, to try to rise back up again. So really, anyone, I don't mean to be mean, but anyone who's conceptualizing at the beginning of this equation that liberal or conservative will be eliminated from the equation is a jackass. I mean, really, you're a jackass.
It's actually impossible.
I mean, but so many people start this equation with the idea that there'll be a utopian conservative or a utopian liberal, and in this utopia, that other side will cease to exist. Okay, shut up. Really, come on now. I can't take it seriously.
It will just get born again. I mean, it's inevitable that some people will be more progressive, whether that's good or bad or whatever, and some people will be more kind of careful and stuff. There's obviously I know that doesn't even begin to capture either of those two sides.
No, but I got your point though.
That polarity is like yin and yin. It's like hot and cold. They don't even make sense without reference to the other one.
Exactly. So to me, it's and this sounds obvious that we're talking about this, but it's amazing how many upper level political thinkers start their thinking with, whether they say it out loud or not, it's based in the words they use. Somewhere in there is the basic given that there's a utopia where the other side isn't there. And I'm like, okay, you stop. So one, that's never happened to start with. And because it's never happened, that means that nature has spoken. We are the most advanced species. We are very well designed. And part of that is that we have both those elements in every generation. So that's nature's wisdom telling us you don't eliminate the other side. That's not how we got here. There's nothing evidence to back up that that's how we got here. You know what I mean? But if you listen to either one of them,
always those conservatives.
Oh, exactly.
Always, they were the ones who got us here, and the liberals were just attracting the whole time.
Yeah, or vice versa. The liberals are the conservatives just hold space until liberals come in to break through the next ceiling, and then the conservatives just hold space for a while. I don't think. God. But that brings to the next one. What if you can get that first one right? It'll help with the second one. The first one is just a conceptual stupidity. But the next one is a moral thing that comes from that. But it also comes from just a deep hole people have of just being freaking thirsty. Is enemies. Looking at the other people as your enemies. Now listen, there are people on the left and the right that are good people. They're Americans or they're French or they're whatever. They're actually trying to make a better life. So I don't know how anyone can actually look at all conservatives or all liberals and not say that a lot of them are just good people trying to get by. Do you know what I mean? And so the idea of being able to vilify that many people, I think right off the bad. You have to like go in the mirror and look at yourself and ask, why am I being like this?
You can even just look at the distribution of liberals and conservatives and see that some aspects of these stances just come from people's life circumstances.
Yeah.
Like people on certain college campuses tend to be way more liberal and certain areas of the country are way more conservative. Maybe there's a reason for that. And so like it's useful
geographically,
geographically
education,
like what they have. And so
race and gender are oftentimes,
So the point is that like maybe that we can't all see everything. And so it's useful to have people who are they're probably going to be inclined to take different views because they just live a different lifestyle that you wouldn't experience or see the value of.
That's a very good point. And I think it's one or the other. It's binary. And it's not always easy, but I find it's pretty much always binary, which is recognizing, now some stuff is just stupid, which I'll get next, which is like people who have a problem with facts and science. And I've noticed that people on both sides do. And then,
right, yeah. The liberals have been bad with that lately.
Yeah, it's been bad.
Conservatives have been for a while.
Exactly. So neither one of
them
doing well on that one. But this element, realistically, it's kind of what you were saying, Mitchell. You're not supposed to. This is going to blow a lot of people's brains. It shouldn't. You're not supposed to have all the same view. If we did, we wouldn't be nearly as successful as we are. The success comes from such a wide varieties of looking at how to do the world that can work together. That's the magic. That's the magic. But people are always like trying to say, oh, you're ruining the magic. No, the magic is, now some stuff, like you said, if you just believe in stuff that's just patently not true, then that's wrong. But other stuff is opinion. There's some stuff that is opinion. There is no, and humans are going to have different opinions, and that's a good thing. And there's a part of that, you're kind of carrying a weight. I've noticed this people like for example, like in the military, people say, oh, they are this and that. Well, I know myself, I'm more into arts and things like that. But without the military, you wouldn't have the life we're having now. It's always been a part of life. It is there. Vice versa, you'll hear people saying like, oh, those artists, all their ego and drugs and fornication, if we could get rid of them, when did that ever happen? Can't even 10,000 years ago have art. That's just stupid. But it's amazing how, like, imagine eliminating things. Well, two things are a problem here. One, that's just dumb because you're trying to eliminate something that you can't. But also, that says something about you. Something's bothering you, and you need to figure out what something is because it's not something that's been here in nature for eons. That is not the culprit. There's another culprit that you need to find of this incredible I'm not happy feeling.
Yeah. I would say, I mean, and that immediately assumes more than, I mean, you could possibly know, like saying like, oh, like something should be eliminated completely. Well, do you know what's going to happen if that's eliminated? Do you know, like, what the implications of that are, or like all the value that area those people could be giving, if you aren't a part of that, or, because if you honestly think something should be eliminated, that must mean that that likely means that you aren't really that involved with it. Because otherwise, why would you say that it should be eliminated completely if you were involved with it and had some connection to it that was this valuable to you? So I guess maybe not always, but oftentimes there's like a combination of like, there's like an ignorance to it when people say that.
But on that, what I was kind of talking about, Ben, related to the ignorance you mentioned, is there is sort of just ignorance, but there's also sometimes a willful ignorance. Do you mean, or an ignorance that perhaps is not willful, but it's coming more from a possession rather than an intellectual failing? Do you mean it's more like something's like on, they got some demon on their shoulder that's kind of making them look for this enemy. I mean, that's why because sometimes the ignorance, intellectually you can educate people, But other stuff, I'm sure you guys don't talk about from comment boards and reaction videos, where someone will say something that is, patently stupid. And there's, I mean, that's bona fide stupid. And they're confronted with bona fide evidence. And they just refuse. That is not an intellectual issue. That's a personal kind of possession thing going on there.
Yeah, you got to know what you're dealing with to solve it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, like, is there a situation, where you would, I mean, because, I mean, when it really comes down to it, there's got to be, like, certain things, like, if you go down specific enough, there's got to be things that, like, either, like, deserve, like, to be completely reformed or should be gotten rid of. But I guess if you're talking about, like, on a macro scale, if you're talking about, like, entire, like, fields that people are involved with, or entire, like, ways of being, ways of living, like art, for example, then obviously that's completely wrong. But if you zoom in to something, really specific, is it possible that should either be reformed entirely or gotten rid of?
One thing I find interesting that no one really seems to talk about, and I find it very annoying, because this is something that's captured my attention since I was a wee child. My memory's lousy, but I do know that has always grabbed my attention, still does to today, which is what works best and what has the history of working best. Okay, let's look at that. You have sort of a scientific way of coming at it. You have a spiritualist sort of way of coming at it. But they both are similar in that in science, there is a neutral rigor, right? And with a true, like, spiritual seeker, there is a neutral rigor. And this neutral rigor has clearly, no one debates this. If you look at all the past civilizations that have been here, right? Everyone knows this. There's certain luminary people, either in scientific breakthroughs or spiritual breakthroughs, and everyone's like, they're awesome. They came up with, equals squared. They came up with, see everyone else as an extension of yourself. So as you harm others, you harm yourself. I mean, everyone's like, that's genius. Okay, now we all know that that's genius, right? That's a given. Next, I would assume, I probably shouldn't get myself in trouble, but I'd like to think it's obvious that there has been a small portion of each generation that was doing this upper level scientific and spiritual thinking. History bears this out. Yet we're always doing Ming Dynasty this, Mormons that. Like, but the history is never with any group. It's this subgroup. I don't know why that subgroup of seekers isn't being lionized. Do you know what I mean? Like the people who actually just want knowledge. Because right now, it's hard if you get anywhere near politics to actually be like a scientist. Because you're going to piss off people from global warming. You're going to piss off people that there are, in fact, two genders. I mean, so if you're a scientist, if you're a true scientist, there's no where are you supposed to go?
Yeah, you get on the podium and you're like, oh yeah, the results of my experiment didn't go so well. It's like that's your stump speech. People are gonna throw like
so we all know this
rocks at you.
Is clearly possessed. Okay, right here. That's it. I coalesce my thought in this. What do you guys think of this? Clearly, science has this track record of bringing us forward, as do denominational seekers. Seekers who what they're doing is the model they either came from or surrounded by. History backs that up. We're still talking about whether or not the Nazis or Antifa are better. I'm like, why is that the discussion?
Seriously, I totally agree with that. Like, just
you have a good track
you guys
record
are
on
all
what?
screwing this up.
Yes. Yeah. Like,
Is a man-eating lizard or like a mutant polar bear better? I don't know. It's like just take, I don't know. And that could be kind of cool. I don't want to compare those to like communists and because maybe a man-eating lizard is actually a beautiful animal that we just shouldn't be around. Yeah, I mean, if it's a real creature, I mean, it was, evolved over time. It's like, I don't know.
And because of that, seriously, that's a good point, because I've noticed that the people that they don't like, I like. Now, there are some they don't, and those are just like generally reprehensible people. Side wants them to mess up their branding. But there's this other group, your Ion Hurst-Yelly, your, you know what I mean, your Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, and both the sides are like, they suck. I'm like, how do people, like, for example, I don't know how people actually can look at those people and think the fact they don't fit into one side or the other is a bad thing. Like, they're too good for either sides. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyway, long story short,
Dawkins side on some things, but anyway.
Say again?
Dawkins fits in sides of something, but that's a particular separate thing, I guess.
Right. Any of these examples, they have their own unique philosophy and political structures, for sure. But in general, I was kind of just talking about the theme of thinkers that later generate, basically, like, I'd like to figure out this formula. There is historically a trend on the kind of people that later generations look back on favorably. And we are not raising up that kind of demographic. Right? Free thinkers, for example, in every generation, historically have a good track record. I mean, they do, but in their time, it's always sucking. I'm like, now that we have, a decent amount of human history under our belt that's recorded, can't we say to ourselves, we should probably go out of our way to tone down popular parties and try to actually, like, see if we can't listen to the voices of free thinkers, because historically that has been where the next levels are actually coming from.
Yeah, I mean, we have the documentation. We have like the history documented, and we remember these people, and they're taught in classes, like Albert Einstein or what have you. But we don't talk a lot about the patterns that like what made these people great. What did they do that other people don't, and what are some of the similarities that they have that cause them to be great. We don't spend a lot of time talking about that. We talk about the specific things they did and why they were influential to the particular field that they're in, but we don't talk about or to many people, but we don't talk about like what are the higher level I guess patterns here between these great people.
That's a great, just so that's a really big deal. I can't stress enough what a big deal that growing up, I think it's how I got to be where I am now. I mean, I've talked about Pod Layer and things that kind of were an impetus for it. I think one of the critical elements was that one I mentioned is that I was trying to figure out the difference between what my spirits are giving me versus what I was seeing in the world and the incongruity. But when I went on that journey, the first thing I naturally did was I looked for help. And when I looked for help, I looked to great people. Mm-hmm. In fantasy, in real life. You know what I mean? Modern day and ancient times, and figuring out how do those people do it. And you're right, there really isn't, maybe the modern internet age can help with this, is creating a culture that's not so much defined by region, by higher living. Because I think I don't care what country you come from, what philosophical or religious background you're from, studying the finest humans that have walked the earth. And what I've noticed is that when a person's awesome, like you have people from like China that are inventing numbers and whatnot, everyone's like, that's a big deal. Do you mean like numbers are a big deal? Any human who's not stupid knows numbers are a big deal. And so the humans that help bring that to our attention. So like that group of people, pulling them out from their various, religions, their various nationalities, and saying, because they're similar. I mean, if you compare Chinese people to Americans, seem very different. Swedish people to Brazilian people seem very different. If you compare like biologists from Brazil to biologists from China, not that different. Not that different if they're very good. And so that kind of universal species excellence, that does not have a voice yet. Do you mean? Because like this collection of the greatest thinkers and philosophers and souls from around the world. That's our collective mentors. That's our global tribe of elders. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But instead, we're choosing between Nazis and commies. I mean, how is that still the option choice? That's ridiculous. You mean like that's crap in general? But we've seen humans doing awesome stuff, and they're like, there's a pattern to it. There's a pattern to awesome humans, and we're like, we're not researching that. We're researching how to be Nazis 2.0. Fuck.
Yeah.
And communists, I mean, like, you know, like, well, the Nazis are horrible. I'm pretty sure communists have actually killed more people.
I mean, really, between Nazis and communists.
I'm not in any way using an argument that Nazism is better.
Oh no! I was totally backing up, Mitchell. I was basically like, no, they're both horrible. I don't know why people keep like saying, if you're saying that Nazis are bad, you can say that as long as you're not standing in the commie aisle, and vice versa.
Absolutely.
But if you're saying either one of those, I don't really give a shit what you have to say about other people. I mean, really check yourself. Ridiculous. Yeah, but I'm hopeful because there has been major changes. Like, you know, when photographs came in and people saw the Civil War, it freaked them out. The whole world had a bit of a freak out, the first world anyway. And, you know, like the internet and so forth has brought these things in. So I'm hopeful that people complain about it. And there is an issue with like this new generation. You guys are part of it, and the next generation even more so, that is so connected to the internet. And there are dangers of that, but there are awesome blessings.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the blessings is actually, because I did this in my generation on purpose. It was harder when I was growing up, but I was able to do it, which is, and people before us did it with books. One of the greatest thinkers throughout history, you know, they actually didn't really fit into Germany or wherever they were from. They fit into books. Books was their universe. When I grew up, there was computers, there was video games and things like that, and I just kept doing that all the way into the internet and the radio and, you know, all that kind of stuff. Basically, because I'm from Baltimore, I don't have much in common with people from Baltimore. Do you know what I mean? I don't even know what that means. You know what I mean? I'm sure, I mean, but for me, I identify with the comics I read, the music I listened to, the movies I watched. And so I think that's a really good thing, because there is a danger of, you know, everyone going crazy with, you know, porn and snuff films, and that's bad. But the upside is there's a like a tyrannical control of all these nation states and traditional ideologies. And they've like taken all the ground. But the internet is like a whole new set of ground. And I'm hopeful that the generations forward are going to be able to take advantage of that and see how.
Yeah, and it's like infinite. Yeah.
Something Eileen talks to me about is like, you know, she laments anytime she is forced to go to a brick and mortar store. She hates it. She's like,
oh my god, and that's why the CEO of Amazon is the richest man in the world.
Exactly. And she's like,
it's like,
because once you do that, because if you walk in any store, even like a great big massive store, they will try to wow you how awesome their store is.
mm-hmm.
No store can actually match the internet. You know what I mean? It doesn't come close. And so, you know, better options are how people are kind of getting confused with the options, and they're unfortunately, I'm upset about this, they're getting caught echo chambers. That's a problem. Because echo chambers can trap you.
Yeah, I mean, it's like people are very good. Like the internet makes it very easy to kind of, you know, get what you need and connect all these different things, but also makes it very easy to kind of like box yourself in with everything you need, all information you need, but every kind of information you need. You know what I mean? So you can tailor it to whatever flavor you want, and that's one difficulty.
Definitely. And so I think maybe you were mentioning, Mitchell, that has been troubling me is myself. I think all of us probably share this, but I won't speak for you. But I myself am generally left of center. I'm not like far left, but I'm left of center on most things. I'm as a philosopher, I'm primarily I call myself a humanist, a naturalist humanist, and because of that, I tend to be a left of center. But I'm really bothered by the lack of truth on both sides, but the left is worse right now. It's really annoying me.
Free speech. That's
yeah,
just
the free
such a
speech
core
thing
value,
really
and they are against it. And there's one of my leftist friends right now. I have Facebook open. They just posted something. There is only one side. Fuck Nazis. Like, I understand, but that's just there. That's not the whole story, and that comes from the echo chambers.
Yeah,
where you can say something like that and it feels really good, and you're angry, and you get that validated, but you don't get the back reaction.
Yeah.
Until it erupts into violence, which is exactly what's happening.
Yeah, and people, this actually silences people from talking to each other too. Like it feels uncomfortable to talk about politics on Facebook. You know what I mean? Because people kind of have this very like one-sided, one-dimensional view of different groups of people that disagree with them.
You just have to have that attitude.
And then people get like really angry, when you make just an honest post. Not even going, if you make like an honest post on your opinion on something, people will get like really angry at you and accuse you of things that aren't necessarily true because of how they perceive people with, your sort of opinion, or who seem to have your sort of opinion. So
that one's kind of scary, because it's like a level of immaturity, like a spiritual, just humanistic immaturity. That's saying, I mentioned a lot, it really is true. And this needs to be internal. Kind of like if you want to grow, you have to accept pain, you have to accept loss, you have to accept that you are wrong. And so you want to beat yourself up to where you have no ego at all. But actually to have a proper ego, you need to be accepting pain, loss, and I was wrong. And a lot of people, they hate that feeling. They need to associate that feeling with actual progress, weakness, right? To allow themselves to feel pain, to feel loss, whatever, they freak out. Like people, like when they think about dying, the loss of their life, their brain short circuits. And they'll listen to a lot of ideologies that don't make much sense at all. Short-circuited state of being. You know what I mean? And then like the left and the right trying to eliminate each other. If you're really growing, and this has been my experience of truth, and I've been pursuing it vigorously and continue to do so, I found that you have to keep going, side of it. No matter how genius you are, it's a inroad to something. And always there's,
I have that
every day, and then you're like, oh, that's another. And if you don't get comfortable with that feeling, as you get older and older and older, and you resist feeling that, it's gonna fuck you up, because it's true. That's life. And so, and then you project that anyone who is the embodiment of you hearing some stuff you should have heard already, you attack them and try to hold it off, but you can't, because they're really just speaking for a part of reality that you don't feel like hearing about. It's immature, and it leads to bad endings, because basically these immaturities, the rest of the populace has to kind of shoulder them. You know what I mean? Like the rest of, like the Antifa and the Nazis fight, are like, we have to do, really? Come on. because you're too immature to act like your utopia is in fact a utopia.
Yeah, it just kind of makes everyone weaker, because that makes it more difficult for other people to have conversations, which then kind of sort of pigeonholes people who would otherwise want to have a conversation from actually talking about it. And then that makes those people more likely to develop the same habits when it comes to, people who disagree with them, because they don't have that kind of exposure and openness to friendly dialogue on that front.
That's probably a good time to call for a night. That was a great discussion. I got to rush off that. And actually Thursday, I already kind of know we're going to start talking about. I wanted to kind of maybe just talk a bit. I want to kind of prepare myself for filming I want to do about beliefs and why people believe what they believe, and what are some very important questions. Mm-hmm. So as a part of that there is some sort of truth. I have opinions on, but some things are just true. On those things that are true, people fall off of it. And one that I find personally fascinating is this, that feeling. Well, I love emoji reading. It teaches us this about myself. As I thought Christopher Hitchens is one thing, and then I realized he was something else. And that's good in itself. That's wonderful to see what he was as Xeni. But it's also wonderful is to ask, hey, buddy, why did you think he was the other one? Did you incorrectly sell yourself? People do not spend enough time acknowledging that you get sold on stuff and that these things can be incorrect and that you have to watch out for it. I mean, that's not done enough.
Mm-hmm.
Because one thing I noticed that happens consistently, and I know it's tricky, but so even though you never get it completely, you can keep getting better, which is I have a level of intellect and a level of ethics that I apply to things that I'm proud of in general. But there are periods of time I'm definitely dumber and I'm slacking on my morals. I try not to, I try my best, but I can feel it. And sometimes even I don't notice it right then. If you keep looking back at yourself, you will notice like, oh, okay, that wasn't my best me. Like, right, just right there, the two sides don't acknowledge I could be a better me. Because they're kind of like taking their not yet better self and projecting that onto the other side. That if I can eliminate them, that would accomplish this thing that is really only accomplished by me getting better. Mm-hmm. That's it. Deferring me getting wiser, me getting stronger, me getting better onto something else. You know what I mean? Either an external target or a sugar pill that says, "Oh, after you die, this happens." Cool. I can rest that. That rest. I'll know this. That's not a good thing. There's a kind of existential discomfort that's a positive, and a lot of humans have sort of internalized as a negative, and they try to, in their own internal logic, which has a lot of flaws, a lot of sugar pills, a lot of partitioning, and then the way they look at the world, a lot of me and us versus them, a lot of scapegoating, a lot of if I could just get rid of you, the world would be utopia. Mm-hmm. So anyway, it's a huge topic, but that part keeps coming up. Different ideologies, but in the left or the right, or different pet causes, but still, health gets hijacked. That's a fascinating discussion in the multitude of ways, because I think demon slaying is something you can really help bring to the public. And when it comes to that, you have to ask, like, why is someone who, you see all the best of them, Jordan Peterson, and I admire him in a lot of ways, but in certain topics, he's not as sharp as he normally is, not as fair, not as deep. You know what I mean? And myself, the same thing as well. The good ones, and give Jordan Peterson his credit, he analyzes himself. Do you mean so those areas of him that are errors that I kind of see, I give him his credit. They're few and they shrink. Each time I see his videos, I see a shrinking of those areas. I admire that a lot. That's the kind of person that I always try to be as well. Any person has that, that's the recipe. But a culture of doing that is not, I don't know, idealized enough. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Sort of like equal, I don't know, some other ideologies that line up with like traditional political views, they're idealized as if you do that, you'll achieve being the best.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to. I don't want to interrupt.
Oh no.
I should get going soon, actually, but go ahead then.
Oh yeah, I mean, I guess something I've been thinking about that relates to, I guess, the left and the right and their different ideologies. Is it seems like one thing we really want is as a society to be, is there's this like push and pull between like collectivism and individualism, and of course the people on the right, they tend to champion individualism, and people on the left are more likely to champion collectivism. But both of those on their own, champion can be, the left can champion unhealthy collectivism and the right can champion unhealthy individualism. but I mean, obviously those are meant to be brought together, and we talked a lot about how the left and the, obviously we can't just eliminate the left or the right entirely, or their views. But it seems like, I mean, we really want to be collective as a society, but also have like as much like individual power as possible. Whereas like people on the left will oftentimes present ideas that I think are, they are technically, they do technically bring us together in certain ways, but they're also disempowering individually. Whereas people on the right will sometimes, continue, they'll promote ideas that have certain, and many of them have served us really well. And I don't want to, like, for example, capitalism, I think, is a really reliable system in many respects. But of course, it depends on like how the system is set up and so forth. But we also can't forget, that there are many ways I think that we can, we can collectively work together while not disempowering anyone. And I think if we try to move towards that general ideal, that could help take us in the right direction. It's a good thing to contemplate on, I think.
That's a good point.
As far as like creating a good system and a good way of living. Which, I mean, it gets back to like productive harmony. It's like we want to be together, but also like as productive as possible, so.
Sure. 4% off?
It wasn't. I was just going to say, I got to get going. I mean, it's past time.
Yeah, I hear you. Okay, that was a great session. I really enjoyed it, and we will pick up on Thursday. Good stuff. Have a great night.
All right.
Have a great night, everybody. All right, you guys.
See ya.